So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. So we're at the 7 seals, which are going to reveal an analysis of what God is in the word order. It's the opening up of the question, what is God? And that's the same question that is being answered through the 1,000-year periods, isn't it? What is God? So the Bible text begins, and I saw when the Lamb opened the seals, 4 horsemen, 4 beasts, and 4 horsemen. And so we have the opening of the first seal as the seal of mind. That the first beast said, "Come and see a white horse." And here John Dorley says that white is the light of mind. It is the light of mind that has everything within it. The very first touch of light, the very initial touch of light has the fullness in it, doesn't it? The full reflection within it. A white horse. And he that sat on him had a bow. The 7, that sense of the 7 days of creation. A creative sense also. And a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. It is a symbol for the first 1,000-year period, the power of mind, that power of mind to be creative and to be victorious, to conquer. How do we conquer? What is it in that first 1,000-year period that enables us to set forth along the whole course of those 1,000-year periods and to conquer? We conquer with the pattern, don't we? We're given the pattern. We're given that light of mind, that light of the first 1,000-year period is the whole pattern of the 7 and the 4. So to say, with this you will conquer. And then he comes to the second seal. And the second beast said, "Come and see a red horse." Now we're going to see also what is being conquered, what's going to be overcome. We see now that spirit comes into focus, and that spirit handles all that redness, all that claim of the flesh. You know that red was always the color that stood for the flesh, the color of the ground, the Adamic sense. And spirit handles the belief of the flesh. And to him that sat thereon and had power to take peace from the earth, a great sword was given unto him. So we have that sword of spirit. We have an indication really of the second 1,000-year period where we had the separating, how spirit separates, how it begins to to discern, to be able to show us how to tell the difference. You remember that second 1,000-year period was that wonderful period of Noah. How, what does it say about the grace that grace was on Noah, or that he found grace in the sight of the Lord? Noah had the pattern. He was stamped with the pattern. And you know that he built that ark, and that ark had 3 levels to it, didn't it? It had 3 levels, and on the top, on the roof, a window that looked out. Well, what could you see when you looked out? You could only see heaven. It wasn't a window in the side. It was a window in the top. And so he had that pattern, and he built his consciousness according to that pattern. And with that consciousness, he rode on the waves. He rode the floods. He used the floods. See, he used turbulence. Whenever you have floods, flood waters, turbulent waters, you have the claim of chaos and turbulence and crisis. He used that to lift him to higher ground. So that second 1,000-year period is all to do with spirit, all to do with the language of spirit. You see the sorting out, the separating away from the true language, all the material languages. All the other languages were confounded, so that only that language of spirit would begin to stand out as the true language. It's the separation of opposites with the sword of spirit. And then we come to the third seal. It is the seal of soul. The third beast said, "Come and see a black horse," the claim of no identity, of an obscured identity, of the absence of identity, because black is the absence of color. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. So it is the balance of soul, the ability of soul to weigh and to measure everything, to balance everything. And he says, "See that thou hurt not the oil and the wine." This is what soul does. Soul ensures that nothing will be hurt that is good in the whole development, but that which is not of the nature of soul will be burnt up. That's the meaning of that biblical reference to the gathering together of the tares and the wheat, and the destroying of the tares and the gathering of the wheat into the barn. So that this true analysis of God is going to gather everything that is worthwhile into the barn. Gather it back to its principle. And that's what you had in the third 1,000-year period. You had that gathering of everything into the promised land, the going through that wilderness experience where there seemed to be 2 things going on, where the way didn't seem to be clear, and yet the whole purpose, the whole direction in that way was to bring everything into the promised land, bring everything back to its principle. You know, that any sense of, wilderness, of course, implies a wandering, doesn't it? You know, that third 1,000-year period of the wandering and kind of just meandering all over, and sometimes our experience seems to be that way, that we're just wandering from one place to another, and we don't see the purpose in it. We don't see the meaning in it. And I happened to be reading about this this sense of chaos, reading about chaos and turbulence, and they were describing the flow of a river. And they said in this book, I believe it might have been James Gleick's book on the science of chaos, the writer said that a meandering river has a high degree of complexity within it. That the meandering is a very high sense of order that isn't visible. It isn't visible on the surface. That there are strata of order, different levels of order going on, complexity of levels of order. And so I love that, because that is so much our experience in the third 1,000-year period. And we look at things and we think, this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't have any purpose or meaning, and why am I going through this? And I don't need this. I don't need this experience. And what is it that says we don't need it? It is the very small perspective that takes that experience, or tries to take it out of the context of the whole, and hold it up and say, this isn't good, this isn't necessary, this isn't right. And it isn't whenever we take it out of the context, but within its context it belongs to that whole complexity of order. And soul will only build on the order of spirit. So any wilderness experience, any wandering experience, is soul building on the order of spirit, on the complexity of spirit, and leading everything in a non-reversible way. That there's no reversal. You cannot go back to Egypt. As much as you think back on those flesh pots and the voluptuousness of it all, and the apparent abundance of the material condition, and wish you could go back to that, with some aspect within consciousness still wants to go back to that, there's no chance that you can ever go back with soul. The soul keeps the whole thing in balance. Soul balances everything in that experience, and will keep the symmetry of soul and the self-similarity of the pattern, you see. Soul will maintain that pattern across scale, across every wilderness experience, and see that nothing is hurt. See thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Nothing is ever hurt in any experience that is worthwhile. But the fires of soul will burn up whatever is not worthwhile. And so we come to the fourth seal, the opening of the fourth seal. Principle demonstrating its spiritual power over its opposite. And the fourth beast said, "Come and see a pale horse. And he that sat on him was death and hell. Death and hell followed with him. And power was given over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, hunger, death, and with the beasts of the earth." Well, it's not an easy symbolism to decode, but it is the symbol really of the kind of situation we have if we build on a false principle, on a false science, on a false system. If we take the human sciences, the physical sciences, as the thing itself. Human and material principles and sciences will not bring forth life Only principle, capital P, will bring forth life. But the false sense of principle will bring forth death. And hell follows that. That's a hellish thing whenever you give yourself over to a false sense of science or principle. Naturally, this is all exchanged the moment we come out from the true sense of principle. Then we see that nothing is in operation but that principle, and that even those sciences that we call human and material at this point are the one science beginning to emerge, beginning to shadow itself forth at every level. So everything is a question of standpoint, isn't it? What standpoint do you take? What standpoint do you take to interpret the world, to interpret the different sciences and systems and the progress that is taking place in the world? Do you take the world's standpoint? Then this is just going to kill your vision. But if you take the standpoint of principle, you see the vision of that principle, that all that is ever going on is the operation of the one principle and the one science. This is so important, so vital to see. And in the 4,000-year period, naturally this was all epitomized by the kingly period and the prophetic period. The age of the prophets and the time of the kings, the raising up of the first king, of Saul, of seeing, you see that came out of really an unscientific sense, a personal sense. Give us a king, we want a king. A personal sense of wanting to have something govern us and rule us. And so Saul came out of that desire, and he proved not to be adequate to the throne. And so the search was refounded and rebased, based then and founded in prophecy, founded in Samuel as a symbol of the prophetic standpoint, or the standpoint of theocratic government, and David was chosen on that basis and became the new king, the true king, the prototype for what a true sense of government should be. And naturally that kingly line is just dotted with good kings and bad kings, with different degrees to which that ideal, that prototype was carried through. But always the prophetic line was at the basis of everything, as though to say, this is the real way, the real government, the true government. Government under God, direct relationship with God. Establish your direct relationship with principle. This is the only thing that can really govern you. And so it's the handling of a personal sense of government, and the demand that the government by principle come into focus. And so we come to the fifth seal, the opening of the fifth seal, the seal of life. And it says, "And I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held." And you hear the 5,000-year period? The belief of the 5,000-year period of those souls, those Christian souls that were slain for the word of God and for the Christ testimony, saying, "How long dost thou not judge and avenge our blood? How long is this going to go on? This is typically a 5,000-year period standpoint, a standpoint of a consciousness that has not yet seen the 6th and 7,000-year periods, but is staying in the 5,000-year period. How long am I going to go through this? And white robes were given unto every one of them. White robes were given unto every one of them. A sense of a new garment, a new consciousness coming upon them. And it was said unto them that they should rest for a little season. So to say, just wait. Just wait a little bit. Wait a little. The 5th isn't enough. You need a new consciousness. Begin to put on that new consciousness. Begin to put on a new robe. It's a white robe again, where the reflection, the full reflection is present. And that new consciousness is coming that will free you from the sense of persecution. That was the belief of the 5,000-year period. It's the belief of the 5,000-year period that does not see the 6th and 7,000-year periods. The belief that there is persecution and suffering and the need to avenge something, you see, human justice, wanting human justice. What is it that answers all of that? It is the 6th. It is truth that will answer that cry for human justice. And so truth comes in. Truth is the answer. And here we see now the crux of the whole matter. The opening of the 6th seal. The opening of the 6th seal, which Mrs. Eddy refers to in the textbook and says, now, remember, this has something to do with our present age. And what happened in the 6th seal, the opening of that seal? There was a great earthquake. There is your earthquake. There was a great earthquake. The sun became black. The moon became as blood. The stars fell from heaven, fell unto the earth. The heavens departed as a scroll. Oh boy, huh? This is what happened when Christian Science came to the 6,000-year period. This is what happened when the textbook came. That it shook everything. It shook the whole earth. It was a non-linear event of the highest magnitude. Not a magnitude 7.4 like we had in California a couple of weeks ago, but of infinite magnitude. And it overturned the old world. You hear it overturning the old world, the old system, the old paradigms. The sun was black. All the old systems that we counted on. See that sense of sun, moon, stars? The moon became as blood. The stars fell from heaven. The heavens departed as a scroll. The old systems rolled up on themselves, you see? They departed as a scroll. You see, they implicated right back up into themselves. Every mountain was moved out of its place. Every calculus was moved out of its place. Everyone hid in the dens of the rocks. So you've got rocks and mountains. See, no matter whether it's a big calculus belief, big calculus belief of theology or medicine or a false sense of science, or it's the little rocks, our own little personal calculi, our own little personal sense of calculating, that everything was affected. The whole field of consciousness was changed, was overturned by that non-linear event. For the great day of wrath is come. Who shall be able to stand? Nothing and no one could stand before that event. So all the old paradigms were shifted, and so they continue to be shifted. And they're shifted with acceleration. They're shifted because the feedback principle is moving everything quicker and quicker and more quickly all the time, so that those shifts are happening, those quakes are happening, continue to happen all the time, moving us on. And the misunderstanding of what science is and of what health is being transformed. Isn't that a different interpretation than we get from the old religious sense, of predictions of earthquakes, etc., as indicators of Jesus' second coming? Yes, there was a second coming, and it came. And that was the earthquake, the coming of the Christ science. And that is an event. That's the advent that rocks the very foundations of everything and overturns the whole calculus, the whole symbol system, false symbol system with its categories, everything that concerns mankind. So the heavens have to unfold and unroll as a new scroll. We got the new scroll, a new explication of the implicate order in the 6,000-year period.